Hey everybody, how you doing? My friends call me Dave, and you can call me Daveypoo, the Mobile Music Minstrel. Today, I'm going to do part 3 of Electro-funk. I have already created a groove in the vein of the things that I have done before in order to save time. So I also have some peripherals set up here today. I have my Korg Nano Control 2 set up to control the faders here in AUM because, hey, it's fun and I've never done it before, so I'm playing around with it today. Okay, so I already set up a very quick groove. I'm going to play it for you here. I have a 4 on the floor, kick drum pattern, okay, drum pattern. Kick drum is on 1, 2, 3, and 4. Snare drum's on 2 and 4. Claps are on 4. Hi-hats on the offbeats, the and of 1, and of 2, and of 3, and of 4. Okay, so what we did before, it's very, very plain sounding, but it's a very acceptable place to start, okay? It's a nice, wide open, basic groove. Now, I have added a very, very simple bass line here with ISEM. Okay, 4 notes. C is the key that I'm in. The root note here is C. It's on the downbeat. As I told you before, it's a great starting place for bass, is to have the root note on the downbeat. We're going from the root note to the 5 in the key of C, to the flat 7 in the key of C, to C again, the octave up, okay? We also have a second half of the measure is all space. Okay, one of the great things about funk music is leaving space for every instrument to be awesome. We definitely want to do that. Okay, it helps the whole groove breathe. So, in addition to those things, I also have cells here, which is playing a chord progression over this bass line. So, I'm going to pause that for a second. So, this chord progression, I've designed a chord progression in the key of C that basically pivots through a bunch of different chords that work in the key of C. So let me see if I can show you that here with this keyboard so that you can see. So the main key we're in is C. Okay, I am taking the second inversion of the chord. I am taking this is the first note of the key of C, third note of the key of C, fifth note of the key of C. I'm taking the 5 and putting it down here just to make it a little meatier sounding. So the chords I'm using here in cells, I've got a C. Okay, actually, I believe I played it here. I'm sorry, my bad. I am playing it in, this is second inversion. Look at that. So I went from C, I have an F. F is also in the key of C, and it shares the C right there, so I'm only moving 2 notes. Then I went to B flat. Now in the bass line, I was using C, G, B flat, and C, so B flat is right there in the bass line. Then I went back to F, and then C again, to F. Now here, I went to an A flat, because C is the third note of that A flat chord. Then I went to B flat. Again, B flat's in the bass line. Then I went to A minor, because the C again is the third note in an A minor chord. Then I went to G. G is in that bass line. Okay, it's the 5 note in the key of C. And then I believe I went back to B flat, maybe, I don't know. But I know in there also there's an E minor, an F, and a G. And then I had an extra chord to fill out, so I did a G suspended. So all of this stuff is all notes that'll pivot around a C ostinato bass line really well. Most of those chords have a C in them somewhere, and the rest of the time the notes are shared with the bass line. So I'm going to mute my last thing here. So let's hear how that sounds. C, F, B flat, F, C, F, A flat, B flat, A minor, G, B flat, C, E minor, F, G, and then G sus4. Okay, and that's the whole progression. Okay, they're all super standard chords. They're all triads, okay? I'm not using any 4-note chords. I'm only using 3-note chords here. Okay, it's super, super straightforward. Oh, I'm peeking out over here. Let me turn this down a little bit. Get a little bit of the... Okay. So now I've got a chord progression that rolls around, but the bass line is still playing that same ostinato. The last thing I added in here was I've got some tinkling from Yamaha's FM Essentials. And it's tinkling over a C Dorian scale. Now a Dorian, it's a mode. The Dorian mode has the flat 3 from the C scale in it. It has the flat 7, and it has a natural 6. I like it because it's a nice mashup of a minor scale, a pentatonic scale, and major scale. It's got some nice crossover, and it gives you a different kind of a flavor than just playing with a pentatonic scale all the time. Okay, and it provides some interesting harmonic content. Now, you can hear there, not everything works with that tinkling, okay, on D Dorian. Not every note matches up, but I'm willing to live with it being a little wonky for now. This is just a demo, it's not perfect. Okay, so this is what I've started with. What I'm coming into the game here with. So how do I vary it once I get to this point? What the heck do I do with this? Okay, I can write a melody, but right now I've just got this cycling groove and I want to do something interesting with it. One of the things that you'll notice with the grooves that I've done is they're all 120 beats per minute. There's a couple reasons for that. Firstly, that's what the tempo that AUM defaults to, but secondly, 120 beats per minute is the standard dance tempo. What happens if I drop this down to, I'm gonna drop this down at 95. And all of a sudden, the whole vibe of that changes. Now, there's a lot of space in this groove, okay, between the drums and the bass. So, what do I do here from now? Now I've slowed it down, that's great and all, but because I've slowed the tempo down, now I can make the instruments a little busier to fill in some of that space. Now here's a good rule of thumb. If the drums are busy, the bass line should be simple. If the drums are simple, the bass line can be busy. They have to complement each other, but if they're both busy, that just gets to be too much. So I'm gonna make this drum beat a little more interesting. Okay, that's not bad. I'm going to add some accented hi-hats in here. Okay, I'm going to do some of the same tricks that we did in the last video. Okay, having some accents in there gives their drums some dynamics, which a lot of classic drum machines don't always have by themselves. The drums always sound very static, or can sound very static, so dynamics really helps liven things up. Okay, I'm going to shuffle the drums a little bit so it gives it a little swing. I'm going to mutate the hi-hat a little bit so that we get some extra notes thrown in there. I'm also going to go to the bass drum. I'm going to mutate the bass drum a little bit so we get a little more life in the kick drum as well. And if you'll notice, there are some accented hits in the kick drum as well to give it a little more punch. Now that's not bad. Now I'm going to do one more trick to liven up the drums a little bit. I'm adding 2 tracks here because what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the output of the kick. I want to add some, split the output of the drums. I want to add some reverb onto the drums, but I don't want the reverb to be on the kick, and I don't like the reverbs that are built into BeatHawk. So what I just did there is I sent channel 1 to mix bus A. A bus, if you don't know, bus is a router. It's a way to get audio from one place to another place. Okay, Audio Bus, the app, is a routing app. It's a way to get audio from one app to another app. Okay, that's what a bus does. It takes audio from one place and it sends it to another place, or takes signal from one place and sends it to another place. So now I'm going to receive from bus A, and here I can receive from bus A. So now I have 2 of the same drum track. I am going to add reverb on one. Now, here's another trick. I don't have an AU EQ. In fact, I'm going to stop this for a second. I don't want to blow out your ears. I don't have an AU EQ. At least not one that I like. There are some here in AUM. I'm not as familiar with them. That'll have to be for another video. But here's a trick I just figured out. I like ape filter. Okay? An ape filter. So, a filter can not only... I mean, okay, by design, it's designed to filter out certain frequencies, right? It's like, that's the whole point. It's acting like a sieve. It's taking certain things and leaving them, and taking other things and getting rid of them. Well, if I alter this filter a bit, I can use it as an EQ, okay? Because it basically functions the same way. It's a specialized equalizer, if you will, okay, if you want to take a little bit of a leap of faith. So I've turned this filter now into a low-pass filter. So all it's going to do is, or I'm sorry, a high-pass filter. So all it's going to do is it's going to cut out low frequencies. Part of the problem with drums and reverb is that when you have the kick drum hitting, it's bouncing around an artificial room with a reverb, it just gets very muddy. So what I'm going to do is I've split the signal. Now I'm going to have a dry drum signal, drum beat, and then I'm going to have one that's affected with the reverb, but the reverb affected one is only going to affect frequencies above a certain point. So we're going to have a dry kick drum, but the rest of it is going to be affected with the reverb. So check this out. So for down here, hear all that wash that's being created by the kick drum. Whereas if I just... It's kind of guesswork, you know, I'm just doing this off the top of my head. But that sounds better. Now what happens if I bring in... Okay, bring in the dry signal on this other channel. I'm also going to turn down... Turn that off, and... And there, now you've got a little life in there. I could probably kick this up a hair. I like to hear the reverb tail on the claps a little bit, but not too much. So, there are a million ways you can do what I just did. That's only one way of doing that. Okay, so we've slowed down the tempo. We've now added a little life to the drums. We've given them a little swing and a little... we've moved the kick drum a little bit so it's not so steady on the floor, but we've left a lot of space with the bass line, right? That tag afterward is great. So, what are some of the other things that we can do with this now? Well, we can obviously do any of the opposite of what we just did. Instead of slowing it up, we can speed it up. Okay, but you have to reverse some of the rules here. If you're going to speed it up, now hear how the drums sound a little psychotic, sound a little nuts, right? Well, you've got to dial it back a little bit. If you're going to speed things up, it's going to get busier. So now maybe you want to go back to your... Okay, maybe turn the mutate off. Okay, so that way the drums aren't so crazy at a higher tempo. But see, the groove still works. Okay, the groove still works, even at this tempo. I'm just going to turn down this hi-hat a bunch, because it's... Okay, so... Now, again, we've sped up the tempo, so that means we've added more notes in a shorter amount of time. So... if you want to make it sound less busy, one of the things you can do is start pulling things out. So what happens if I take out the first note of the bass line? Now, this goes against one of the things we talked about earlier, that you want to have the downbeat, you want the first note on the root note of the chord, right? The key that you're in. You want the downbeat of the bass line, right? Because that sort of establishes the one. That's a big James Brown funk principle, the one. Everybody syncs up on the one. right? It's for the dancers, so everybody knows where to step. Bam on the one, okay? That is just a guideline. It's a great place to start, but you can always break the rules once you understand how they work. So now, I've opened up the groove even more because I don't have that pulse on the downbeat. You know, what if I want to go here and I want to go, and I want to throw in some, you know, I mean, this is, you know, I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but now you have space in the groove to add some things because everything doesn't sound so busy, okay? Now, we talked about dropping things out last time. If I drop out the chords, all of a sudden I've got this. And again, it's a little more open. Okay? Now, I'm going to do one more radical thing here. Everything that we've done has had a very strong backbeat. The snare drum has always landed on the 2 and the 4. It's a dance thing. It's a funk thing. Okay, funk loves a backbeat. It provides a very strong foundation for people to dance. And ultimately, that's what funk music's all about, is getting people to dance. What happens if all of a sudden we don't have the snare on the 2 and the 4 anymore? Well, first of all, you can remove the snare entirely, and it's a great way to break down something. It's like the disco breakdown. Like we're building up to something, right? So, let's see what happens if we put the snare drum in front of the first beat. Okay, so instead of landing on, in front of the second beat. So instead of having that 1, 2, what happens if we put it here? Now, I'll make it a little louder. See how the groove hiccups a little bit there? It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a choice, right? Okay, it makes the beat kind of hiccup a little bit. You can also do it here. Okay. Okay, these are all options to break up the repetitiveness of a backbeat, but let's create something pretty busy for a snare drum. Okay, now I'm going to take when you get too much snare drum in there, it tends to be distracting, okay? I find that I can't stop listening and focusing on the snare drum. There's just way too much going on. Okay, so here now we're using 3 snare hits instead of just a straight backbeat, but we're still leaning and emphasizing that backbeat because it you know, makes my butt want to shake. That's the backbeat. I always find myself defaulting to a backbeat. Everything else sounds good. The backbeat always sounds great whenever I'm doing funk. So I always end up using that. Now, here's another 80s trick you can use. Now, you may not always want to have the clap play on every single beat. The clap gets to be a bit much too. So you can have it do that where sometimes it hits with the snare and sometimes it leads into it or echoes it. Right, you can do things like that. Or this is a classic one. Right? Okay, so these are all ways that you can make these things more interesting. You don't just have to have a single bar loop. You can change and have it be more. So if you go up here, sorry, let's try that again. I'm going to create a second beat. I'm just going to do a straight, simple one for the sake of, oops, that was claps on. I don't want claps on all four. I'm going to do this real simple for now. So we're going to have this play. It's going to go to the first. It's going to go to the first after one loop. That's pattern 2. Pattern 1, if I go to manual change, I'm going to go to the next one after one loop. So now it's going to play one of this, and then it's going to play one of this. Okay, ready? Okay, so now you've got a more interesting, you know, bass line or drum beat. So maybe we take... So, okay, so I'm going to do this. So I'm making some of the characteristics of this similar to the other one. I'm making some of the characteristics of the second pattern similar to the first. Okay, so you can have we could play through all 8 of them. You can go over here, you can have it trigger after 2 loops, or 3 loops, or 5 loops, or 10 loops, or however you want to do it. There's all sorts of ways to vary this so that it's not just one loop over and over and over and over and over again. Okay? Now, I'm going to go back, though, because this fast tempo is killing me. This groove feels so much better down here. So, I hope that gives you guys a whole bunch of ideas on what to do with some of these grooves, okay? You can go even crazier, okay? Now, this isn't going to work too well, but I'll do this quickly for the sake of illustration. You can have one Rosetta instance control a second Rosetta instance. So right now, Cells is controlling Xeon here, right? Well, I can also have Cells control bassline. Now, it's not really going to work perfectly here because it's not set up to do so. Right? It's giving mixed information to, Cells is set up specifically to play the chords in Xeon, not to play bassline and have bassline match those same chords. So you'd have to set up a second instance of Cells, but that's the beauty of AUV3s, isn't it? But this should show you that you can have Cells trigger bassline, and so that you could have an instance of Cells playing Xeon and a second instance of Cells playing bassline to have them change chords at the same time, rather than having bassline just be an ostinato all the time. Okay? So there's all sorts of ways that you can make this stuff work. You don't have to use the Rosetta apps. It's just what I happen to use. Okay, because I like the workflow and I like the way Bram Boss makes his apps, but I feel like we're sort of treading the same ground, but I'm kind of spent for ideas here, so I hope that gives you some new things to work with, some new ways between these 3 videos to get some funk grooves out of your system. Try some new things, and I'd love to hear what you guys come up with. I hope this helps. Please, if you like the channel, subscribe to the channel. I've got more stuff coming. Please like the video. Please comment below. Please, make signs at home. Put them up in your neighborhood. Go stand on your rooftop and shout to all your friends. Drive down the street blaring your horn and screaming, "Daveypoo is my guy." Whatever works for you that you can get the word out, I really appreciate it. I hope you guys are digging the videos. I hope you're liking the content. Please come back and see more, and groove on, brethren. Have a great time.